Okay, so welcome to part two. In this part, we'll start off with the end of part one. That is, we start with the definition of economics. From this definition, according to the text that we are following, we'll bring out 5 components. Then we are going to ask ourselves what these components are. A. B. Once we address the question what these components are, we will also be trying to ask ourselves how these components are related to decision making. So let's start. Now, in order to, or you can see the slides.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So to understand choice, according where is this? You'll find this in Stiglitz and Walsh, page 4 and onwards. Okay. When we talk about understanding choice, we talk about 4 different concepts. Number 1, trade-offs. Number 2, incentives. Number 3, exchange. Number 4, information sets. Number 5, distribution is in your text, but I'll just mention it, but we won't discuss it. So we will be asking ourselves, what is a trade-off? Why does it arise? How does that affect our decision making? While asking these 3 questions, we'll also ask, what will happen if there was no trade-off? Trade-off jodi na thakto, how would that have influenced our decision making? We ask the same question for incentives. What is incentive? How does it influence our decision making? If there is no incentives, what may happen? Exchange, what is exchange? How do we define exchange? And then finally, information sets. So the trade-off, okay, we start with trade-off, concept 1 of 5, trade-off. Trade-off is basically arises because of scarcity. Scarcity arises because we are constrained. If we want to move forward, an opposite force is working from the other way. If we want to move backward, an opposite force is also moving from the other way. এটা কি রকম মানে এটা কিভাবে বলতে পারি আমরা? সেটা হচ্ছে, if I want to maximize my utility, I will be constrained by 2 things. Number 1, the prices of goods. Number 2, my income, right? It is common sense.
Yes, sir.
But if I want to maximize my happiness from consumption, I want to move forward. But there's an opposite force coming from the other way, which is prices. Prices constrain me. At the same time, my income is also is constraining me. There's a third component, which is time for the consumer. For the producer, the third component is technology. Okay? So if we are a business organization, then technology is something that's going to constrain us as well. Acha, what happens if I want to reduce my expenditures? That people want to do that sometimes, right?
Yes, sir.
What is the opposite force when I want to reduce my expenditure? Ideally, I don't want to spend a single penny. Right?
Savings?
But that's not practical. Why isn't it practical? It's not practical because if I don't spend a single penny, I don't get any utility out of my consumption.
We can live off, actually.
যদি বলে যে আমি টাকা খরচ করবই না, আচ্ছা এটা হতে পারে, great, I've minimized my expenditures, but is that a practical thing to do?
No, sir.
So how do we look at it? If we're looking at it, the problem is a minimization problem rather than maximization. I will definitely want to minimize my expenditure because expenditure is something that I don't like. But at the same time, I will have to ensure a certain level of the standard of living. For example, in Dhaka,
Saving will help in that case. Saving will help in that case, sir. সঞ্চয় সাহায্য করবে।
থাকবে না, মানে ব্যাপার হচ্ছে কি, for example, if I want to survive in Dhaka city, there is a minimum living standard, তাই না? I have to ensure education, I have to ensure traveling costs, etc., etc. So there is a minimum living standard that I have to maintain in Dhaka city. Now, in order to maintain this living standard, I can spend 100 taka, I can spend 200, I can spend 300, right?
Yes, sir.
So if we look at it like this, that of course I want to reduce my expenditure, but আমি যদি expenditure 100 টাকায় নিয়ে আসি, then I can't maintain a particular living standard. তাহলে সেটা কি practical হবে?
তো আমার স্ট্যান্ডার্ড তখন একটু নিচে নেমে আসবে।
নিচে
জি
নেমে
স্যার।
আসছি না। I want a particular living standard. To maintain this particular living standard, the happiness, what is the minimum expenditure? This is how we will look at it when we look at it, look at a problem from as a minimization problem. Clear?
Clear,
জি
sir.
স্যার, ক্লিয়ার।
And
Yes, sir.
the maximization problem is very simple. ওটা বুঝতে কারো সমস্যা হয় না. If I want to maximize my utility, I want to do that, but I'm constrained from with a backward force of prices and my income. তাহলে আমাদের প্রথম জিনিস ট্রেড অফ হচ্ছে trade off. If we use the word trade off means sacrificing. That means if X and Y both are available for me to choose, I cannot choose both at the same time. Why can't I choose both at the same time? Number one, I may not have the money to buy both at the same time. I may not have time to consume both at the same time. So I will try to choose one over the other. So the first thing is, because of scarcity, what are the scarcities? I have a limited resources, limited income. I have fixed prices in front of me. I have a certain amount of technology if I'm a producer. Plus, I have a certain amount of
শর্টেজ
time
অফ টাইম। ইয়েস স্যার।
within which I have to consume. For example, the pizza joints. ওরা বলে না যে you can come and have as many pizzas as you like. মাঝে মাঝে করে
ইয়েস স্যার, বলে।
ওরকম এখন ওইরকম একটা দোকানে যদি আমি গিয়ে যদি বলি আমি একটা বিশাল বালতি নিয়ে আসলাম, তুমি আমাকে দিয়ে দাও, আমি বাসায় গিয়ে খাবো, এটা কি অ্যালাউ করবে?
No,
No,
sir.
sir.
নো স্যার।
এটা অ্যালাউ করবে না, তাই না? সো বাট দ্য most of the joints ওরা যেটা করে, what they do, they say that okay, you have 2 hours time within which you can consume, or 1 hour time. The moment they fix the time, how many pizza joints can you eat in 1 hour? There must be an upper limit.
ইয়েস স্যার, লিমিট থাকে।
Might have 4, somebody might have 5, but that doesn't mean that anybody can consume 400 to 500 pieces. ঠিক আছে? So
Sure.
time is also a constraint. If we change the time limit from a short time to a long time, our consumption pattern, our decision pattern will also change.
Our decisions change too. Yes, sir. Okay.
Over time, if the time is longer, we respond in one way. If time is short, we also respond in one way. যেমন আমরা যখন রেস্টুরেন্টে যাই, আমরা অনেক বেশি খাবার খুব অল্প টাইমে খাই না?
জি স্যার,
Yes, sir.
বুফের কথা বলা যায়, বুফের কথাও বলা যায়।
হ্যাঁ, বুফে অল্প সময় কিন্তু খেয়ে ফেলে, বিকজ দ্য টাইম ইজ কনস্ট্যান্ট। বাসায় গিয়ে আমরা সেভাবে খাই? বাসায় যদি কাউকে দাওয়াত দিই বা কারো বাসায় গিয়ে দাওয়াত খাই, we are more relaxed. So what happens,
জি
we
স্যার, অনেক রিল্যাক্স। বুফেতে সেটা সম্ভব না।
so the thing is, এখন হচ্ছে okay, there's X and Y both are I like both of them, but I can't have both of them at the same time, so I have to sacrifice one for the other. What is the normal psychological process? The normal psychological process, I will compare the two. তাই না?
জি স্যার।
The moment I use the word comparison, I am ranking. তাই না?
Yes, sir, priority ranking. এই সময় চিন্তা করব প্রায়োরিটি কোনটাতে আছে আমার।
Great. Now the moment we rank, we have already divided. This is the best, this is better, and this is good. The moment we compare between the two to find out which one I want to buy, we are ranking the two or three alternatives in front of us. So
জি স্যার।
if it is something that we like, we will try to rank, identify the best, the maximum one. So ranking টা কি হবে? Descending order হবে না? If it is something that we don't like, we will try to identify the minimum value. তখন ranking টা কি হবে? Ascending order এ হবে না?
অ্যাসেন্ডিং অর্ডারে হবে। জি স্যার।
So when we say ranking can be in both directions. If it is something that we like, we order it as best, good, best, better, good. If it is something that we don't like, then we want to find the worst one, minimum value. Worst, bad. এইভাবে তখন আমরা ranking করব. So basically what we do, we rank according to our preferences, according to our ability, etc. Then we choose one. ঠিক আছে?
Yes, sir.
This is exactly what we do. Now, in order to do that, we confront something called opportunity cost. If you have never heard this word before, probably you have if you have done a basic economics course, তাই না?
Yes, sir, করলাম। হ্যাঁ, জি স্যার। এটা শুনেছি স্যার।
আচ্ছা,
ইন্টারেও শুনেছি।
so এটা অবশ্যই শোনা হয়েছে। Now, if you have never heard this word before, if I ask you to write a meaningful sentence with opportunity cost, what will you do? The cost of an opportunity, তাই না?
জি স্যার।
If I
So
just
it's
ask,
basically the
yes,
next best alternative for
I know. We'll come to that later. But the thing is, if somebody has never heard this word, then because all of us have heard this word before, most of us have done a basic economics course. কেউ যদি এটা জীবনে নাও শুনে, the cost of an opportunity, তার মানে কি? The moment I say the cost of an opportunity, that means I have sacrificed something in order to get something. তাতে কি এটা বোঝায়?
Yes.
So when we decided to come to Brack University to do an MBA program, is there anybody in this class who had no other option in front of them? একটাই অপশন ছিল, এরকম 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 কেউ আছে ক্লাসে?
No, sir.
No, sir. এটা ইজি ডিসিশন ছিল মেবি আমার জন্য ছিল।
আচ্ছা, তোমার জন্য ছিল, কিন্তু তোমার but was this your the only option in front of you?
No, sir.
Definitely,
Yes, sir.
all of us came here for an MBA program. We must have had at least 3 options in front of us. Whatever those options were. Not necessarily they were to do an MBA, the 3 MBA programs. It could have been a job, it could have been something else. So what did we do? We ranked according to descending order. This is the better, this is the good. And then we chose the best over the better and the good. Because we cannot do an MBA, we cannot work, we cannot also have do a third thing at the same time. তিনটা একসাথে করতে গেলে ultimately we can't juggle any one of them. So the logical thing was let me rank and then decide what. So if somebody came here as a Brack undergrad, they had one argument to come here. ঠিক আছে, Brack undergrad হলে Brack কিছু special financial benefit দেয়. So that could be one argument. Another person might come up with an argument that I joined Brack program because my office is in Bonani. I can come but just by rickshaw. ঠিক আছে? Another argument for whatever reason. ঠিক আছে? For what reason? For which reason they came here. So এই জিনিসটা হচ্ছে opportunity cost-টা হচ্ছে একটু আগে যে বলেছে next best কি বলছে? Who said that?
It's basically the next best alternative choice.
না সেটা বুঝলাম, এটা কে বলছে? What's your name?
So Zahid.
Zahid, okay. So you said something that was mentioned in the text, right? That came back to you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And the reason why I'm asking, you'll just answer right now. Next best alternative বলতে কি বোঝায়?
So for example, suppose I have 2 options and
Why can't you have 3?
yes, sir, it can be multiple, like
The text, each and every text that I've come across for the last 35 or 40 years, no, 40 years, আমি এত বয়স না আমার, the 30 years মতো, সেটা হচ্ছে I have never seen a single textbook mention 3 options.
yes, sir.
2 options, বুঝছো? So when you say the next best alternative, that's why I started out with the premise that everybody had at least 3 options in front of them before coming to Brack.
Yes, sir.
So if you have chosen Brack as the number 1 best, then there was a second and third or even fourth and fifth option in front of you as well.
Yes, sir. There was
Yes, sir.
definitely.
If there was 3 options in front of you, there was a second best, there was a third best. চারটা থাকে, there was also a third, fourth best, whatever. ঠিক আছে? You chose the best. Opportunity cost is the next best. That was the second best option that was in front of you before making the decision. So if your ranking is BAC, suppose you had three options: A is one university, B is BRAC, C is another university. Your choice was definitely either B is better than A, better than C, since you came to BRAC, which is B, অথবা your ranking was B is better than C is better than A. So if your ranking was BAC, then A is the opportunity cost of choosing B. If
Yes,
your
sir.
ranking
Yes,
was
sir.
BA, এটা হতেই পারে, because now we don't have two options, we have three. Then the opportunity cost of choosing B was sacrificing C, which was the second best alternative. এটাই হচ্ছে next best alternative interpretation. So next best alternative does not mean, it means the second option that was available, but I did not choose it because I did not find it to be the right option at that particular moment. ঠিক আছে?
Yes, sir.
এখন we come to a concept called sunk cost. And এই কথা বলার উদ্দেশ্যটা হচ্ছে যে we have started off on the premise that we want to see how a good decision is made. Whether that decision was good or bad, we can never tell before making the decision, তাই না?
Yes, sir.
After the decision, then we can say, okay, coming to BRAC was a good decision. Somebody might say, না আসলেও পারতাম, আর এক বছর পরে আসতাম, ঠিক আছে, আসাটাই আমার ভুল হয়েছে। এটা whatever our experience is, we can only tell that after making that decision. But then after 2 semesters goes on, the two options that were in front of you, A and C, এগুলি কি আর exist করে?
No, sir.
That's why it becomes a sunk cost. Once we have committed that we are choosing B over A and C, অথবা over C and A, then we enter a new environment. Our decision making changes. ঠিক আছে? Once our decision making changes, then whatever was available before we made the decision A and C or C and A no longer exists. That's why it becomes a sunk cost. For example, if BRAC University now decides যে once in-person class আবার শুরু হবে, স্টুডেন্টদের জন্য স্পেশাল একটা বাস সার্ভিস দিবে, ঠিক আছে,
Yes, sir.
ডিসিশন হলো এন্টার ঢাকা সিটিতে এই বিভিন্ন পয়েন্টে নানান বাস সার্ভিস দিবে। আচ্ছা, if they want to go for this particular project, they allocate a certain budget যে আমাদের এত টাকা খরচ হবে। Now any policy maker will first ask, what is the alternative if we don't offer bus service?
Yes, sir.
তখন if I'm a clever business manager, I'll find an alternative যে ঠিক আছে, if I don't offer a bus service, what I'll do, I can give students a certain কি বলে একটা অ্যালাউন্স দিতে পারি, তাই না?
Yes, sir. একটা ভাতা দেওয়া যাবে, যাতায়াত ভাতা।
মানে if we buy say 10 buses, this is the cost, this is the maintenance cost over 5 years, but এই কস্ট না করে আমরা প্রত্যেক স্টুডেন্টকে একটা ভাতা দিলাম,
each student কে একটা ভাতা দেওয়া হবে।
ভাতা দেওয়া হলো, this is your traveling allowance, ঠিক আছে? Now then they debates, one party says no, we should buy bus, another party says no, we should give an allowance. Finally they decide no, we'll buy the buses, and they do buy the buses. Now once they bought the buses after 6 months, এখন কি যদি বলে যে it was a good or bad decision, এর 6 মাস যাওয়ার আগে টের পাবে
না, তার
No,
আগে
sir.
বলতে পারবে না, 6 মাস পর
বলতে পারবে না।
ইফেক্টিভলি বলতে পারবে।
বা 3 মাস হোক, সোজা কথা ডিসিশন নেওয়ার আগে বলতে পারবে না। Now
জি স্যার।
we have to assume that the past does not influence our current decision making.
Yes, sir.
This is a very, very strong assumption, because I'll use this example that I'm using now that I used in the previous section. সেটা হচ্ছে মেয়েদের একটা অভ্যাস আছে জুতা কেনার, তাই না?
জি স্যার।
মানে ছেলেদের তুলনায় মেয়েদের একটা জুতা কেনার অভ্যাস বেশি না?
আমার মনে হয় ছেলেদের বেশি, আমার ভাইয়ের জুতার প্রতি অনেক বেশি অ্যাট্রাকশন।
Then your brother,
ছোট ভাইয়ের,
বুঝছো, মোস্টলি দেখা যায় যে ছেলেরা জুতা কম কিনে, মেয়েরা জুতা কিনে বেশি। আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, ধরলাম যে মেয়েরা বেশি।
স্যার এখনকার ছেলেরা বেশি কেনে স্যার।
এখনকার ছেলেরা বেশি ঘুমায় দেন I different generation. আচ্ছা anyhow,
স্যার মেয়েরা ব্যাগ কিনে স্যার, ব্যাগ কিনতে পছন্দ করে স্যার।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, ব্যাগ কিনে বা জুতা যেটাই হোক, এরকম এক্সপিরিয়েন্স হয়েছে যে জুতা কেনার 7 দিন পর মনে হচ্ছে দূর ওই জুতাটা বিশ্রী, পায়ের মধ্যে বাজে,
অনেকবার
sir.
এই
Yes, sir.
রিফ্লেকশন অনেকবার হয়।
এরকম হয়েছে না?
জি
Yes,
স্যার,
sir.
কয়েকদিন আগেই।
জি স্যার,
আচ্ছা কয়েকদিন দেখছো somebody, we have somebody in the class.
মার্কেট থেকে বাহির হওয়ার সাথে সাথে হয়, এমনটাও হয়।
মনে হয় অন্যটা পছন্দ হয়েছে।
এই কথা বলার উদ্দেশ্য হচ্ছে before you make the decision to buy the shoe, once you committed that I want to buy this particular pair of shoe, তখন কি হচ্ছে? So isn't it the best decision at that particular moment?
ইয়েস স্যার।
স্যার
Yes, sir.
You wouldn't have committed yourself for that pair of shoes, right?
Yes.
জি স্যার,
This is what look at. পরবর্তীকালে যদি ইটস এ ব্যাড ডিসিশন, ইটস গন, আমাদের ওইভাবে চিন্তা করতে হবে, এটা এটা গেছে গা, এটা আমাদের করার কিছু নাই, ঠিক আছে?
জি স্যার,
The sunk cost, we will assume that it does not affect our previous decisions, but behaviorally, cognitively, it is our back. যে জুতাটা কেন কিনলাম, খামাখা পায়ে ফোসকা পড়ে গেছে, হ্যাঁ, অথবা গিয়ে দেখলা যে তুমি লাল রঙের জুতা কিনছো, পার্টিতে গিয়ে দেখলো বাকি সবাই লাল রঙের জুতা আছে, তোমারটা তাহলে অর্ডিনারি হয়ে গেল, হ্যাঁ। These things happen, but in decision making we assume that, আচ্ছা এটা তো হয়ে গেল না, আচ্ছা this is, we've already discussed this. Before you decided to do a masters at BRACU, you had 3 options A, B, C, you chose B. So এখানে আমরা র্যাঙ্কিংটা দিচ্ছি B is better than A, is better than C. Why ranking? Because we want to find out the best. At the moment we find out the best, we have also separated the better and the good in a ranking way, descending. তারপর হচ্ছে আমরা চুজ করলাম। Now once you've chosen B, A and the 2 options that were available before you made the decision don't exist anymore. We are now in a new environment. Thus the cost of
sir.
B over A or B over C, whatever, is now a sunk cost and it's gone. ঠিক আছে?
Sir, I have a
Yes, sir.
question.
Just let me finish. যেহেতু
Okay,
sunk
okay.
কোনো মানে alternative নাই, because once we have committed that we are going to do a masters at BRAC after 2 semesters, ওই অল্টারনেটিভটা ওগুলি কি আমাদের সামনে আছে আর?
না স্যার, নো
sir.
ওয়ে টু টার্ন ব্যাক।
We can't turn back. That's why we don't look at things that have a zero opportunity cost. Acha, now somebody wanted to ask a question.
Yes, sir. So in slide number 11, there's, sir, can you show it, the slide number 11, kindly?
This one, huh? Can you? Eta. This is slide number
Sir.
11. This is the one you're
Sir,
talking.
I cannot see your screen, sir.
Oh, sorry. I mean, just share koi nahi. My problem. Sorry. Yeah.
Sir, yes, sir. Over here, it said that the opportunity cost of choosing BRACU is sacrificing the next best alternative. That means, sir, over here, the opportunity is BRACU and the cost is University A. Is it that, like, I'm sacrificing that A?
Okay. What is your ranking? BAC or BCA?
Sir, BAC.
Acha, if BAC is your ranking, I've used more than 2 options because each and every textbook uses 2 options. 2 options is never a realistic situation. So I've used
Yes,
3.
sir.
So if your ranking is BAC, you've chosen
Yes.
because at the time of making the choice, that was the best choice. BRAC.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Opportunity cost of choosing B is the next best alternative. That means the second best that was available, which in this case is A. Clear?
Yes, sir. Okay. So,
Okay.
okay, sir. That means,
So my choice is, my ranking was B is better than C is better than A. I chose B because B is for BRAC. So what was the second alternative that was available but I did not choose?
C.
C. So the opportunity cost of choosing B is not choosing C. If your ranking is BCA.
Okay, sir.
If your ranking is BAC, then the opportunity cost of choosing B is not being able to choose A.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, so basically the second choice is always my opportunity cost
Yes.
out
So
of hundreds of choices.
It doesn't matter how many choices there are, but I'm ইচ্ছা করে তিনটা দিয়েছি
The
because
next.
all the textbooks only give two choices. Two choices are never the option, real situation in life.
Yes, sir.
ঠিক আছে? আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, তাহলে এর পরেরটা তো আমরা করে ফেলছি বোধহয়, I discussed it. এই যে we can analyze a decision before it is taken. Once a decision has been taken, we enter a new environment. Now we are students of Brack University. We confront different problems. A and C no longer exists. So once the decision has been taken, it becomes a sunk cost. Opportunity cost analysis does not consider sunk costs because sunk cost is an option nine through which we can compare because A and C no longer exists. The past does not influence. However,
Invisible না, জি স্যার।
carry on. Somebody
না
wanted to.
স্যার, ইনভিজিবল বললাম।
Behavior
Sunk
or cognitive but when that person made that decision, that was the best decision available, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we finished the first concept, trade-off, that introduced opportunity cost, sunk cost, how we make a decision, etc. Once we make a decision, we enter a new environment. Now we are going to introduce the second option, so second component of choice making, which is incentives. Acha. Before we introduce the word incentive, we also have to introduce the word disincentive. Incentive is a technical term used in textbooks, but if we use a layman's language, we can use encourage and discourage, তাই না?
জি স্যার।
Acha. Now let's go back to our parents. When we are very good children, our parents we find an incentive to treat us, right?
জি স্যার, জি স্যার।
Okay. So because that the environment they see that we're very good kids, but when we break the rules or not break the rules, bend the rules, then our parents have a disincentive to give us a big smack on the back.
Yes, sir.
Decision, excuse me. Oh dear. Decision making that we will analyze. Once again. They always hold the breath, then it goes. Okay. Decision making, when we analyze decision making, the environment that we find ourselves in will encourage us to do some things. At the same time, it will discourage us to do some things.
Yes,
So,
sir, definitely.
if we are building a model where the main signal is price, so if the price changes, one side of the market, the households will respond in one way. The other side of the market, the firms will respond in another way.
Yes, sir.
If we are using the if we are not using prices, say income যদি বেড়ে যায়, তখন মানুষের কনসাম্পশন প্যাটার্ন একভাবে চেঞ্জ হয়ে যাবে না?
জি
জি,
স্যার,
sir.
চেঞ্জ হবে।
Yes, sir. They'll start consuming more.
No, not necessarily. They might be starting to consume more expensive stuff. For example,
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
you buy one type of mobile phone. The moment you start earning money, you start buying a high-end mobile phone.
Yeah, the demand goes up, sir.
Huh? Sorry?
Sometimes the demand goes up sometimes.
Yeah. So if we are analyzing, one second, please. Mystery আসছে. Please pause. Okay, sorry for the little break. আচ্ছা আমরা কি যেন বলছিলাম?
It's okay,
Incentive.
sir.
So if we are looking at a environment where income is the indicator, when income changes, people's consumption pattern changes. If we are
Yes,
looking
sir.
at an environment where technology is the indicator, as technology improves, we find firms find themselves in a different environment. They respond in a different way. So
Yes, sir.
there are two types of incentives. Incentives which are inherent within the system, like price, like income, like technology. Another type of incentives is external to the system. For example, all of you who are working in this class, সবাই কি একটা contract sign করেছে না?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
There must
Yes,
have
sir.
been some terms and conditions in
Yes,
that
sir.
contract. If you do this, you will be rewarded. If you do this, you will be punished. এরকম এরকম টার্মস এন্ড কন্ডিশনস থাকে না প্রত্যেকটা কন্ট্রাক্টে?
Yes, sir.
Why?
Yes, sir.
Disincentives and incentives. So what we want to see is what are the internal and the external factors that encourages us to do something. How does that influence our choice making? The opposite is also applicable. What are the internal and external factors that discourage us to do something? That will also influence our decision making. So now let's get back to the slides.
ডিসেন্টিভ কি যেটা আপনি এখন বললেন?
Disincentive,
ডিসেন্টিভ
or incentive, কোনটা?
ডিসইনসেন্টিভ।
Disincentive is just incentive is to encourage you, disincentive is to discourage you.
এটা অপোজিটটা।
Opposite, because if we are looking at a forward movement, we also need to know what a backward movement looks like as well. So incentives are how choices are influenced, at the same time not influenced by changing environments. Now this example is the example that I'm taking from the text. You can think about a different example in the context of Bangladesh or in the context of your personal life. How does the price of fuel influence first-time car buyers? So there's somebody in our class who doesn't have a personal vehicle, is thinking of buying a personal vehicle. ঠিক আছে? So how does the price of fuel, i.e. the maintenance cost, influence your decision making? If you are a second time,
অনেক ইনফ্লুয়েন্স করে স্যার।
of course, and what will you do? You will definitely think about the alternatives. আমি যদি গাড়ি মেইনটেইন
Yes, sir.
করি, I have to maintain a driver, I have to pay tax to the government for the car. Okay, I have to go to
Yes,
BRT.
sir.
আমার ম্যানেজমেন্ট অনেক ঝামেলা আছে, and I don't use the car more than 5 days a week. I just go to the office, I come back from the office. তাহলে your best alternative will be to think about whether you want to not buy a car and then
পাবলিক ট্রান্সপোর্ট ইউজ করব।
public transport or Uber.
হ্যাঁ, উবার হ্যাঁ, জি স্যার।
মানে you go to office 5 days a week, and that's the only main consumption of the car that you have, and you haven't got a car already, so you're a first time buyer. So first thing you will be thinking that গাড়িটা আমি কতটুকু ইউজ করব, কতটুকু ধরে ইউজ করব। This is the first thing you will be. So the price of the fuel, if it starts to go up, then people will definitely initially think about the alternatives. What are the
Yes, sir.
substitutes available in front of us? Number one. Number two, now let's get the time factor into the picture. How quickly can I respond to a change? খাতায় কলমে the change happens just like this. একটা বেড়ে গেল, or the price বেড়ে গেল, খাতায় কলমে আমরা দেখাতে বলবো it can happen in just few seconds. But in reality, when price changes, we say that okay, consumption pattern will change, but that change takes some time to happen.
জি স্যার।
If you live in say Uttara, your workplace is in say Puran Dhaka, come on, would you be encouraged to have an Uber, or would you be encouraged to go for a personal car?
Personal vehicle,
Personal
probably, because it's so much more costly.
That will be much more practical. So when we তাহলে আমাদের দেখো, if we depending on our location, we get encouraged to do something. Depending not on some another factor, we might get discouraged to buy the car. And all these incentives or disincentives, encouragement or discouragement, are all within the system.
ইয়েস স্যার, এনকারেজমেন্ট এবং ডিসকারেজমেন্ট একসাথে একই মোমেন্টে হতে পারে।
একই হতে পারে, and যেটা হচ্ছে যে they also influence our decision making. Clear?
স্যার।
এখন
Yes,
আমরা জিনিসটা একটু বোঝাতে পারবো, সেটা হচ্ছে so if we this is an example of the text which I'm not ইয়ে করলাম না আর কি। If the price of fuel increases, how will this influence the choice of first-time car buyers? You think you're going to buy মানে how flex এই যে এখানে হলো this is where the catch is. How flexible are you to a change? If you are more flexible, then you can switch between alternatives very quickly. If you need the car only to go to the office and come back home, you don't have a family, ঠিক আছে, you rarely go out, তাহলে তো there's no point in buying the car. But if you
জি স্যার
you have a family, then you will be using the car a lot. সারাক্ষণ Uber use করা যায় না. Then you will that type of environment will encourage or discourage you to make your decision.
জি
ঠিক আছে?
স্যার
And think about what the disincentives are. Okay? আচ্ছা, এখন হচ্ছে this is now we are looking at it from a little bit of technical point of view. সেটা হচ্ছে when we talk about incentive, it encourages us to do something. When we talk about disincentive, it's the opposite of incentive. It discourages us to do something. Encourage we will use as increase. Discourage we will use as decrease.
ইনক্রিজ
ঠিক আছে? So if the price increases, it influences households in one way. It influences firms in another way. If price decreases, it does the opposite way. So the questions that we want to ask as from the next week is when will an incentive mechanism work? When do we expect a disincentive mechanism to work? When do we expect neither of the two will work? আচ্ছা এটা এখন আমি this is a balance, okay? In
জি
নিচে
স্যার
বড় আছে আমার ডান হাতটা. That means what will you do? You will either make this light অথবা this heavy, তাই না?
জি স্যার
Yes, sir.
Whichever way you look at it. If somebody says I want to make this light, okay, no problem. If somebody says I want to make this a little bit heavy, অসুবিধা নাই. If it is like this, you will think differently.
Okay, sir.
But what happens if the two sides balance each other?
Equal,
তখন
sir.
একটা ডিসিশন নিতে
Equals.
সমস্যা হবে না
That means you are going to say neither yes nor no, তাই না?
জি স্যার
Yes, sir.
If we find a balance like this, we have definitive yes or no. একটাকে আমরা হয় ভারী করব আর একটাকে হালকা করব, এই তো? Whichever one you want to do, you have a definitive yes or no. The same with this one. If the right hand is up and the left hand is down, then you have a definitive answer. But what happens if the answer is like this?
Sir, you can choose the alternative, sir.
This is the particular situation which you came in your undergrad, which you found in your undergrad under the term equilibrium. You must have come across this word.
yes we have heard of this yes sir
Equilibrium হচ্ছে a situation where we can neither say yes nor can we say no with certainty. When it is like this, আমাদের একটা definitive yes no আছে. When it is like this, আমাদের এখানে আবার একটা definitive yes no আছে. But when the balance is like this, we can neither say yes with certainty nor can we say no with certainty. This is the situation that as we are building the model, this is the incentive that we are interested in. When will it be in equilibrium? Equilibrium means where we can neither say yes nor can we say no with certainty. You must have been familiar, you must be a little bit familiar with equilibrium, right?
yes sir economics এর
Yes.
সব থেকে ইম্পর্টেন্ট এটা সব
Yes,
দিকে
sir.
আছে
পরে আমরা দেখবো যে এগুলি most of them are actually they don't make sense. At least that's what I've understood after 25 years. খামাখা ইকোনমিক্স করতে আসছিলাম. Anyhow, তাহলে incentives টা বোঝা গেছে তো? Oh, another thing we've already mentioned this. Incentives can be inherent within the system like price, income, technology. It can also be external to the system, like when we make a contract. ঠিক আছে, for example, when you came to Brack University as a student, there were some certain codes of conduct. Maybe it's not written, but it is unwritten. ঠিক আছে, which Brack expects you to follow. At the same time, you also expect Brack to behave with you in a certain way. Maybe it's not written.
বাট এটা এক্সটার্নাল কেন
আচ্ছা এক্সটার্নাল কেন?
এটাকে এক্সটার্নাল কেন বলা হচ্ছে?
আচ্ছা
জি স্যার।
ভেরি গুড কোয়েশ্চেন, এটা কে জিজ্ঞেস করছে?
স্যার সামিরা ফারুক।
সামিয়া ফারুক। আচ্ছা, you enter a classroom, the
জি
CCTV
স্যার।
is off, you find a envelope full of money, there's nobody in the
ইয়েস
classroom,
স্যার।
what will you do? What should you do? You enter the classroom in
স্যার
and হঠাৎ করে দেখো যে টেবিলের সামনে, টেবিলের মধ্যে there's an envelope and you open the envelope, হ্যাঁ, and you find quite a few 1000 টাকার notes, আর তুমি আশেপাশে গিয়ে দেখলে আরে এই রুমে তো কোনো সিসিটিভি নাই, তো মজার জিনিস, now what will you do, or what should you do if you are a rational person? You will take the
স্যার
money.
আমি ব্র্যাকের অফিসে এটা দিয়ে আসবো, দরকার নেই।
I will keep the money, sir.
এই তো, this is what we are going to look at, this is the behavior that if you take the money, that's the right thing to do at that moment. You cannot be influenced by ethics and morality. আমি একটু পরে সেটা আসবো, ঠিক আছে? Normally we don't do that, people are not like that. Mostly people will definitely, most people will return it back, তাই না? The analysis that we are going to look at
হ্যাঁ
is
স্যার, বাট কিন্তু অনেক দেশে এটা হয় না,
হবে না তো,
বাংলাদেশে হয়তো এটা হয়।
না না, বাংলাদেশে অনেকে there are good people in Bangladesh as well, এই good and bad people.
শুনলাম যে জাপান কোরিয়াতে নাকি মানুষ টেবিলে ল্যাপটপ রেখে চলে যায়, কেউ নেয় না।
এই যে ওই সৌদি
কোরিয়া,
আরব,
জাপান, চায়না এই ধরনের দেশে।
সৌদি আরব তো you can just leave your gold,
হ্যাঁ স্যার, সবাই ফেরত দিয়ে যায়।
তো এটা এটা এক এক দেশের এক এক রকম ইয়ে, এটা নট নেসেসারিলি জাপান কোরিয়াতে হবে, সৌদি আরবিয়াতেও একই জিনিস। But the objective what I'm saying is how did you এই কোশ্চেনটা কিভাবে আসছিল? How did
স্যার
this question,
এক্সটার্নাল কেন ছিল এটা,
কেন মানে?
যেটাকে এক্সটার্নাল কেন বলা হয়?
এক্সটার্নাল হচ্ছে the thing is if we are motivated by ethics and morality, then the question comes, if I see an envelope full of money, আশেপাশে কেউ নাই, I will not take it, I'm influenced by an external factor, তাই না? Ethics or morality, I'll
জি
tell you
স্যার।
the two later. But রাস্তার মধ্যে পড়ে আছে, ব্র্যাক ইউনিভার্সিটিতে নাই, রাস্তার মধ্যে পড়ে আছে, ব্র্যাক ইউনিভার্সিটি না হয় বুঝলাম, ঠিক আছে, somebody রেখে গেছে, তুমি you came out of ব্র্যাক ইউনিভার্সিটি, you cross cinnamon hotel, হঠাৎ করে রাস্তার মধ্যে তখন এক you find the same thing, an envelope full of money, কি করবা?
তখন নিয়ে নি, তখন নিয়ে ফেলবো।
এই তো আস্তে আস্তে সব now it makes
No,
sense.
sir. I won't.
Now you won't, many people won't do it, that's for sure. দোকানের সামনে কোনো গরিব মানুষকে দিয়ে দিবে, তাও ভালো, হ্যাঁ, যদি
হ্যাঁ অনেকে, হ্যাঁ নিয়ে অনেকে অনেকজনকে দিয়ে দেয় এটা, হ্যাঁ এর মনে হয়।
সেটাই বলছি যে আমাদের ইয়েটা হচ্ছে যে ইনসেন্টিভ হচ্ছে এক্সটার্নাল টু দ্য সিস্টেম, মিনস when rationality is not going to work, then we need to have an external system, এটা আমি পরে বলবো। আচ্ছা, the third concept that we want to introduce is exchange. Our analysis is a market setting. Market setting টা কি, এটা part 3 তে আমরা বলবো, but in the markets people come to me to make an exchange. So the simplest way of doing the exchange is that there's a buyer and there's a seller, ঠিক আছে, and the buyer and the seller, they need to make seller gives his service or good, the buyer buys it. So this is an exchange, but the thing is the exchange has to be voluntarily done. সরি, টর্চ লাইট নিতে আসছিল, আচ্ছা, মানে মিষ্টি কাজ করছে তো। আচ্ছা, কি জন্য বলছিলাম?
Voluntary.
মার্কেটের এক্সচেঞ্জটা ভলান্টারি হতে হবে বলে।
Decision, if we are forced to do something, we respond in one way. If we are not forced to do something, we respond in another way, right?
Yes, sir.
ও, আদান শুনেছে, আমি তাহলে পজ দিচ্ছি, হ্যাঁ। So it's 7:38 now. Can we start at 7:45?
Okay, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir.
এখানে pause দিচ্ছি, আমি 7:45 we will
Sure,
start.
sir. Problem.
Recording starts again. Okay. So welcome back after the break. সেটা হচ্ছে exchange যে হবে between A and B. We will assume initially that the exchange is voluntarily done. That means the seller voluntarily sells, the buyer voluntarily buys. Nobody is forcing the seller to sell. Nobody is forcing the buyer to buy. Okay, so this is the initial thing that we'll look at. Later on, we'll look at when the decisions are forced on us. Sometimes they can be. Now, if exchange is to be made voluntarily, how does that influence our decision making? If we voluntarily buy, then I will be able to calculate the maximum utility that I will get from consuming the good. The seller will be able to calculate the maximum profits or the revenues that he can make by selling the good. ঠিক আছে? Now,
Yes,
if
sir.
operating like this, then we go back to the definition of economics, that the choices of everybody, the households and the firms, that will lead to maximum or optimal use of resources in the society. Is that clear? We all agree.
Yes, sir. Mhm. Yes.
Now, let's give you an example of forced transaction. We all know about Robin Hood, right?
রবিন হুড স্যার নাম মনে আছে কিন্তু ভুলে গেলাম
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Was a Mustang in Nottingham in England, but he had a good thing. He was a good Mustang. Mustang সবাই তো আর খারাপ না. So he was good in the sense he used to rob from the rich and give that money to the poor. Now, isn't that wonderful?
Yes, sir.
Huh? But
Yes, sir.
the problem with this type of exchange is that this exchange was forcefully done, number one. Second problem is, not all rich people are bad. Some rich people
Yes,
have
sir.
worked very hard in order to create their wealth. Some rich people have not broken any rules. ঠিক আছে? বাংলাদেশের আইন অনুযায়ী তারা কাজ করেছে, বা যে দেশে অপারেট করে সেই দেশের কাজ করে they have made some wealth. So if the situation, if the environment is such that if I have some wealth, somebody will steal it from me, will I have an incentive to create wealth? If the environment is such,
স্যার বুঝিনি স্যার
আচ্ছা, আমরা এমন একটা এনভায়রনমেন্টে অপারেট করছি যেখানে আমি যদি ওয়েলথ ক্রিয়েট করি, কেউ এসে আমার কাছ থেকে চুরি করে নিয়ে যাবে, এটা যদি সিস্টেম্যাটিক হয়,
জি স্যার
I have an incentive to create wealth.
will work as a
না
disincentive, sir.
স্যার
আচ্ছা, if everybody is feeling like this, তাহলে কি হবে? Ultimately, the total wealth in the society will not be optimized, তাই না?
ইয়েস স্যার জি স্যার
আমরা initially যে we will be looking at a environment where exchanges are done voluntarily. Why are they done voluntarily? Because if they are done voluntarily, buyers will have an incentive to buy as much as they can to increase their utility. Sellers will have an incentive to create wealth because they know that that wealth is not going to be stolen, like Robin Hood.
ইয়েস স্যার
And ultimately, we go back to the initial part of our definition of economics, that if these things happen, then the total cake will be maximized in the society.
ইয়েস স্যার
After এখন, there is a exception to this rule, this attitude. Governments sometimes act as a parent. Governments force us to do something. For example,
ইয়েস স্যার সামটাইমস
force us to wear seat belts. তাই না?
ইয়েস স্যার ইয়েস স্যার
This is how the external environment is operating. Normally, if we let drivers drive cars, some people will be wearing seat belts, some people will not be.
ইয়েস
But the society expects that people will wear the seat belts for safety. So এখন এটা কিভাবে হবে? We can't give it to the individual. So there is an external force from outside the system, which is the government. The government forces us to wear seat belts.
ইয়েস
আচ্ছা।
স্যার
এখন এই মুহূর্তে the government is not forcing us to take a vaccine, but একটা সিচুয়েশন হতে পারে না যে গভর্নমেন্ট will force us to take a vaccine.
Yes, sir.
এটা হতে আমাদেরকে বাসা থেকে খুঁজে বের করে এসে তারপর ভ্যাকসিনটা দেওয়া হবে, ঠিক আছে? সো sometimes external events happen, they change, they influence our behavior. It can be influenced positively, it can also be influenced
Negatively.
For example, the government takes taxes from us. Does anybody willingly pay taxes?
No, sir.
Nobody will
They have to. They pay, they just have to.
willingly কেউই ট্যাক্স পে করে না, কোনো দেশই করে না। তো but every government forces us to pay taxes according to our income, our wealth, whatever. So these are external matters that encourage or discourage us in incentive process, and the internal ones are the three examples that we gave: prices, income, and technology. এরপরে আমরা
On time, sir.
Sorry, and time,
Time.
yeah. I know you're good follower. তাহলে
Thank you, sir.
okay, তাহলে exchange. After now I'll read the slide. Exchange is just a process by which a good moves from A to B. This exchange takes place in a market. A market is an institutional arrangement. আচ্ছা, আমরা কেন মার্কেটে অ্যানালাইসিস করছি? The biggest advantage that the market gives us is large scale cooperation is possible in markets. নিউ মার্কেট আছে বলে প্রচুর খাবার দাবার এক্সচেঞ্জ হচ্ছে না।
জি স্যার।
আচ্ছা, কারণ বাজার আছে বলে প্রচুর খাবার দাবার এক্সচেঞ্জ হচ্ছে।
জি স্যার, বাজার অবশ্যই করে।
এই কোঅপারেশনটা, লার্জ স্কেল কোঅপারেশন, আদারওয়াইজ এটা সম্ভব ছিল না। Because there was a time before this market system existed, there was a barter system. ঠিক আছে, আমাদের
বার্টার সিস্টেম ছিল।
একটা এক বস্তা চাল আছে, we come and we make an exchange. But after some time, people found out that this is not,
এটা অনেক ইলিগাল ছিল এবং অনেক রকমের মানে লাভের চেয়ে বেশি ক্ষতিই হতো মনে হয়। অনেকে অনেক চিট করতো।
সেই জন্য people over time they found out that interacting in a market is beneficial for everybody, plus it encourages large scale cooperation, which is otherwise not possible. ঠিক আছে, so our analysis that we going to do is in a market setting, because markets make large scale exchanges possible. However, there are some there's one thing is, I don't need to know the seller does not need to know me. This exchange will be impersonal. আমি যদি একটা কোক কিনতে চাই, আমি জাস্ট যাব, আমি একটা কোক কিনে চলে আসবো। The seller doesn't need to know me, I don't need to know the seller. But there are some exceptions. কিরকম? If we are looking at a kidney transplant market, definitely the donor and the receiver have to match each other, right?
Yes sir, personal info লাগবে।
তারপর if we are looking at blood donation, the donor and the receiver have to cross match, otherwise ওই transaction.
Yes, sir.
But we are not looking into those types of exceptional transactions. We are just looking at an impersonal transaction where the seller and the buyer, they don't need to know each other. Because they don't need to know each other, large scale cooperation is possible in a market. Voluntary exchange, we have discussed this. If the exchanges are not voluntary, then what will happen? One person will be happy, another person will not. This cannot be a sustainable, this cannot be a stable outcome. তুমি মাঝে মাঝে ঠকাতে পারবা, but in any business environment you cannot keep on cheating people all the time. It's not
yes sir, not for a long time.
Not for a long time, it's not a sustainable or stable position. আচ্ছা, রবিন হুডেরটাও আমরা বলছি যে রবিন হুডে would steal from the rich and give to the poor. Although his intentions were noble, the transaction was not voluntary. The poor were happy at the cost of the rich. Both were not happy at the same time.
Yes sir.
If both were happy at the same time, it would have been mutually beneficial. Mutually বুঝছো? At the same time, beneficial for both parties. This is the type of decision making environment that we look at. And once all these are is possible, then markets perform three basic questions which we're not going to go into. These are discussed in undergrad. What to produce, how to produce it,
how,
and who will get it. হ্যাঁ এটা আমাদের দরকার। আচ্ছা এইটা এখন জাস্ট ফর দ্য টাইম বিং ইনফরমেশনটা আমি বলছি। buyer and the seller the buyer and the seller have the same set of information on the quality of the product. I'm repeating myself again. The buyer and the seller have the same set of information about the quality of the product. So if we are Gulistan underground market কে কে দেখেছে? আছে কেউ?
জি স্যার।
Very good. Who said জি স্যার?
স্যার রাহাত স্যার।
রাহাত, আচ্ছা। ওখানে কি ভালো জিনিস বিক্রি হয়?
না স্যার।
আচ্ছা কেন হাই এন্ড জিনিস বিক্রি হয় না?
স্যার সেকেন্ড হ্যান্ড জিনিসপাতি পাওয়া যায় স্যার।
আচ্ছা সেকেন্ড হ্যান্ড জিনিসের দাম কম হবে তাই না?
ইয়েস স্যার।
আচ্ছা but when you enter that market as a buyer you know very well what you are expecting, right?
Yes sir.
And who's selling the good to you, he also knows what he's going to sell to you, right?
Yes sir.
Yes, sir.
You in that Gulistan underground market have the same set of information about the quality of the product which is not high end.
Yes sir.
Is there an asymmetry between the two of you? যে একজন বেশি জানে একজন কম জানে?
না,
না স্যার, না equal ছিল স্যার।
Then if we take this same example and look at Bosundhara at Panthupot, they also sell mobile phones. কিন্তু ওখানে কি buyers both have the same set of information about the high end quality of the product there, তাই না?
Yes sir.
So initially we'll look at the information set with the buyer and the seller. The two people in the transaction have the same set of information about the actual quality of the product. So both of them যদি জানে যে এটা low end quality, it will sell at a low price. Both of them যদি জানে it's a high end quality, then it will sell at a high price. আচ্ছা এখন used car market-এ if there is if both of them don't have the same information, then the seller has better information than the buyer, তাই না? Used car market by used mobile phone.
Yes sir. Seller has the better information.
Is this a stable outcome? Used car market আমরা ধরে নিই seller knows better about the actual quality of the second hand phone compared to the buyer. Is this a stable outcome? এই outcome কি চলতে থাকবে সব সময়?
না স্যার,
চলবে না। একইভাবে when we buy an insurance from an insurance company, then who knows better about the actual health of the
buyer sir?
And the insurance company doesn't know the actual health of the buyer, তাই না?
Yes sir.
Is this a stable outcome? Insurance company না জেনে কি সবসময় এভাবে সেল করবে?
No sir.
না স্যার, it is stable.
কেন? Now we come to the information part. Yeah. Okay. So we first of all assume that the two transacting parties have the same set of information about the quality of the product. আমি কোয়ালিটিটা কেন বারবার বলছি একটু পরে এক্সপ্লেইন করব। Used car market-এ we assume that the owner of the car knows more information about the actual quality of the car or the mobile phone than the buyer. In the insurance market, the buyer knows more about whether he's a good patient or a risky customer if he wants to take a loan, than the financial organization. But this is not a stable outcome. Ultimately, cannot stable outcome now. How do markets address these problems? This we will discuss later on. Also, in the presence of asymmetric information, this is very difficult. এটা দরকার নাই। আচ্ছা, quality কেন বলছি? There are some goods we can identify the quality at the time of the transaction, but there is a second problem. It's called moral hazard. ঠিক আছে? We cannot identify the performance until and unless we have used it.
Yes sir.
আচ্ছা, গাড়ির চাকা, ঠিক আছে? Few days ago I had to change all the four tires of one of my cars. আমার জাম বের হয়ে গেছে, কারণ গিয়ে দেখি যে 10,000 টাকার নিচে কোনো চাকা নাই। ঠিক আছে, মানে ভালো চাকা।
জি স্যার।
আমি চাকা কিনতে হলো 5টা কিনছি অ্যাকচুয়ালি, কারণ একটা স্পেয়ার তো রাখতে হয়। তো এখন whether this was the real চাকা or not, I can only understand that after using it for 6 months.
Yes, sir.
Even this is the problem that all many business houses face. They sell you the best mobile phone, কিন্তু ওরা warranty দেয় না একটা 6 months 1 year কেন
হ্যাঁ
দেয়?
স্যার
They
ইউজ করার পর
100 মানে মডেলস একটা দুইটা হয়তো ফেরত আসবে, তাই না?
জি
Until
স্যার অবশ্যই
Yes, sir.
you use them, you will never know whether they were good or bad. So this is the second problem with information sets. Number one, we assume first of all that they have the same information about the quality. Second, when we look at it, we'll use the word experience goods. There are some goods that at the time of buying we know that we bought the best thing, কিন্তু until we use it for some time we don't know whether we bought the best thing. So how do business houses or business enterprises deal with that type of information set? এখন যেটা আমরা আরো ডিটেইলস ভাবে দেখবো, বাট আমরা যে ওয়ারেন্টি গ্যারান্টি নানান রকমের কিছু বলি, তাই না? তারপর হচ্ছে একটা ব্র্যান্ড ভ্যালু একটা আছে। ফর এক্সাম্পল, ইফ ইউ বাই ফ্রম অ্যাপল, you know that although you're paying a high price, you're getting something good. If you're buying, if you're paying,
শুরুতেই শিওর থাকি এটা নিয়ে অনেকটাই
sure থাকা যায় because of Apple's or brand image. ঠিক আছে? Then same argument for say Samsung or any other Android high-end. When you're paying so much, you know that you will enjoy some kind of safety nets. তো এগুলো আমরা পরে আলোচনা করব। আচ্ছা, লাস্টের জিনিসটা হচ্ছে ডিস্ট্রিবিউশন। ডিস্ট্রিবিউশন না, হ্যাঁ না, এটা we are not going to discuss this concept in this course, but since এটা টেক্সটে আছে এটা বলা দিলে ভালো। আচ্ছা, right now we have 41 people who have attended the class, and if you don't mind, can you kindly put your mobile phone, camera on, I'll take the attendance. সবাই আছে কিন্তু, there's 42 people in the class. আচ্ছা, আমি তাহলে এটা নিয়ে নেই। তোমাদের সেকশন 1 এর চেয়ে তোমরা বেটার। সেকশন 1 এ বেশ কিছু ছেলে পেলে, এই সামিয়া সাবা আমিন 196233, ফারনা শম্পা মিম, আর এদিকে মনীষা রাত্রি, সামিয়া সাবা।
I have opened my camera.
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে, যারা ওপেন করতে পারো কাইন্ডলি ওপেন করো।
Sir, I have opened my camera with mobile.
Okay.
Sir, also,
Are you riding a motorbike?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I had my office, and my office ended at 7 p.m. Sir. That's why, sir.
তুমি হানিমা স্বামী, ওই যে কি বলে ওই ইয়ের ওই কি বলে ক্যারেক্টার আছে না? আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে, আমি তাহলে এটা নিয়ে নেই না। হামিমা ইজ ভেরি ডেঞ্জারাস, এভাবে ক্লাস করা যায় না। তাহলে নিয়ে নেই। Okay, go back to our speaker gallery. Acha. So we have 42 people in the class, including me. So there's 41 people. Acha. Don't you agree, or don't you expect the fair mark?
Yes.
So the signal that we are sending is that if you work hard, then you will get a good grade. That's fair. So that encourages everybody to try their best. And when everybody tries their best, the total will be maximized. এটা ঠিক আছে তো?
জি স্যার, ঠিক আছে।
Yes, sir.
Let us assume that those of you who get a very good grade, ঠিক আছে, in 2022 will get a good job with a better salary package, etc. Those who don't get a good grade will get a less qualified job with a lower salary, more inferior package. 20 years later, what will happen? Those who started their career off with a good salary, their children will be enjoying more benefits than those who start with a low salary, right?
Yes, sir.
In today, that is absolutely fair, can end up becoming extremely unequal over time.
জি স্যার, সময় শেষ তো ভাষামো নেই।
সবাই যদি ভালো করে, they will get a good grade. But if a good grade gives you a ticket to a better life. You will not only you will be happy in the next generation, your children will be more better off than somebody who didn't get a good grade.
Yes, sir.
যেটা হয় কি এই মার্কেট সিস্টেম আমরা বলছি খুব ভালো লিডস টু গুড কোঅপারেশন এটসেট্রা মার্কেট সিস্টেমস ক্যান বি ভেরি ব্রুটাল they can be very unequal এবং এটা এটা
Yes, sir.
এই যে আমি একটা ছোট উদাহরণ দিয়ে দেখালাম যে এটা এটা হতেই পারে তাই না
জি স্যার স্টেবল থাকবে না স্যার
we are not interested in that type of distribution okay so এটা আমরা দেখব না আচ্ছা মাইক্রো আর ম্যাক্রো পার্থক্য তো you guys know what it is micro is basically the part of economics that looks at market analysis macro is the part that looks at big variables like GDP employment etc banking policy that means you see the influence of the government more in a macroeconomics course you see
Yes,
the
sir.
influence of the private sector or NGOs or government sector you can also see
Farms.
but the thing is এখানে আমরা basically farms গুলোকে দেখব and we assume that they are not the government as per in the macroeconomics we look at big issues like unemployment monetary policy banking policy etc this will be discussed in a separate course 502 somebody else will take it maybe you have also already done it এটা আমাদের দরকার এখন
When are you going to take this, sir? Eco 502?
sorry
Won't you take this course, Eco 502?
আমি এই 501 এ আমার জান শেষ হ্যাঁ and I don't like talking at a screen এটা এই যে স্ক্রিনের সাথে কথা বললে বুঝছো
কষ্ট।
আমি যখন পাবনায় থাকতাম লোকজন ভাবতো যে আমার মাথায় গন্ডগোল আছে স্ক্রিনের সাথে কথা বলতেছি বুঝছো না আয়নার সাথে কথা বলছি আরে what is
জি
this
স্যার
terrible experience I'd like to see you guys in real world এটা এটা বিসি একটা এক্সপেরিয়েন্স anyhow তো যেটা বলছিলাম সেটা হচ্ছে we are looking at 501 just from a microeconomics point of view so when we look at big topics which are related to business firms how does the banks influence the economy how do unemployment influence etc those will be addressed in macro Acha, what I'm going to do we will stop part 2 in part 3 we will be looking at ways of resource allocation outside the market so up until now does anybody have any question before I start part 3
Sir, I have a
I don't
question.
think so.
beautiful what's your question
Sir, আমরা ইনসেনটিভ এন্ড ডিসইনসেন্টিভ নিয়ে কথা বলছিলাম স্যার তো ডিসইনসেন্টিভ যেটা হচ্ছে যে ইনসেন্টিভ যেটা তো আমরা তো বেস্ট অল্টারনেটিভটা চুজ করি ইনসেন্টিভের ক্ষেত্রে এন্ড সো ডিসইনসেন্টিভ যেটা সেটা কি সাঙ্ক কস্ট আমরা বলতে পারি মানে ইজ ইট আন্ডার সাঙ্ক কস্ট ডিসইনসেন্টিভটা
সাঙ্ক কস্ট হচ্ছে once a decision has been made এখন এমন হতে পারে সাপোজ যেটা বলছিলাম now you enter that classroom in BRAC ঠিক আছে you see that envelope on a table and আশেপাশে তাকিয়ে দেখলা যে তিনটা সিসিটিভি আছে now you will find a disincentive to steal the money তাই না
yeah
and that will be the right thing to do not to steal because somebody is watching you
yes sir
হ্যাঁ so disincentive হচ্ছে just it discourages us to do something
okay
if the price increases sellers have an incentive to increase their production households have a disincentive to increase their consumption is that clear now
yes sir
যদি যদি internal হয় আবার income যদি বেড়ে যায় people have an incentive to do one thing they have a disincentive not to do something else
yes sir I understand
এবার বোঝা গেছে
yes sir thank you
okay any other question from anybody shall we move on to part 3
Yes, sir.
okay then
Yes, sir.